In the early 20th century, the population in Atlanta was booming thanks to industrialization and economic opportunities. But it was still in the throes of racial upheaval, and there were few independent voices telling our stories.
Up next on Black Business Icons, we introduce you to William Alexander Scott and how his leadership made the Atlanta Daily World one of the most successful black newspapers of its time. My name is Lamar Tyler. I'm the founder of Traffic, Sales, and Profit.
And I'm Freddie Taylor, the founder of Urban Intellectuals. Welcome to Black Business Icons, the award-winning show where we feature the journeys, contributions, and achievements of black business leaders and entrepreneurs.
In this episode, we focus on William Alexander Scott, the prominent African-American publisher and civil rights activist known for his role in running the Atlanta Daily World, one of the oldest and most influential African-American newspapers in the United States.
William Alexander II was born September 29, 1902 in Edwards, Mississippi. He attended Alcorn A&M College, now Alcorn State University, and later studied at the University of Chicago. Scott's career in journalism began when he moved to Atlanta in 1917. He worked as a typesetter for the Atlanta Independent, an African-American newspaper that ignited his passion for journalism. On August 5th, 1928, at the age of 26, Scott founded the Atlanta Daily World. It was the first successful African-American daily newspaper in the United States. At that time, there was only one other black paper in the Atlanta area, the Atlanta Independent, which shut down in 1933, leaving the Daily World as the lone voice for the city's growing black community. The newspaper was groundbreaking in its coverage of African-American news, including civil rights issues, and served as a platform for African-American voices in the South. Scott made it his mission to have a black media outlet that would correct the white media's frequent portrayal of African-Americans as criminals.
Scott hired agents to solicit subscriptions door to door, and by 1930, the paper, whose offices were located on Auburn Avenue, once considered the mecca of black commerce, was one of the most widely circulated black newspapers in the Deep South. In 1931, Scott also began circulating the Chattanooga Tribune and the Memphis World, and by doing so established the first chain of African-American newspapers. This chain eventually grew to include as many as 50 newspapers, and in 1932, the paper, which started as a weekly publication, became one of the country's first black-owned dailies. Scott was a staunch advocate for civil rights and racial equality, and he used the pages of the Atlanta Daily World to highlight issues related to segregation, discrimination, and the struggle for civil rights. Scott also had influential connections in the African-American community. He was a friend and advisor to civil rights leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph David Abernathy. He also played a role in the desegregation of the University of Georgia in the 1960s. Scott's work and activism left a lasting impact on the African-American community and the field of journalism, and the Atlanta Daily World is now published online, making it one of the oldest African-American newspapers in the entire United States.
Scott received various honors during his lifetime, including the NAACP's Spingarn Medal in 1948 for his contributions to civil rights and journalism. Sadly, William A. Scott did not live to see his plans come to fruition. He had a lot of big plans, but unfortunately, he was shot and killed outside of his home in 1934, and no one was ever convicted for the crime. His younger brother, Cornelius Adolphus Scott, took over the operation after his death. C.A., as he was known, was educated at Morehouse and Morris Brown colleges in Atlanta and the University of Kansas. He continued to publish news of general interest to Black Atlanta, but he also steered the newspaper towards politics. A prominent conservative Republican, the editorial pages now reflected his views. The Daily World, however, did continue to cover police brutality cases, lynchings, and the Scottsboro case throughout the 1930s, and supported efforts to promote black businesses. In the 1940s, it campaigned against school segregation and the mistreatment of black soldiers in World War II. The paper also supported voter registration campaigns.
But now, the paper's moving in a different direction under C.A. Scott, who opposed the sit-ins and protests that were happening. He felt like challenging school segregation and voter registration and doing things like building black wealth through entrepreneurship was where our focus really needed to be, and that would be how we would combat racial oppression. C.A. Scott stepped down as publisher of the Atlanta Daily World in 1997 after 63 years at the helm. Alexis Scott, granddaughter of W.A. Scott, was named publisher. 3 years later, in May 2000, C.A. Scott died in Atlanta at the age of 92. The Atlanta Daily World remains an important source of news and information for the African American community, and it continues to contribute to the ongoing dialogue on civil rights and social justice in the United States. William Alexander Scott's dedication to journalism and civil rights made him a pivotal figure in the struggle for racial equality in the 20th century. And all of this is exactly why we selected him as a black business icon.
Yeah, another publisher, actually, that is sticking their neck out on the line for the community, talking about what's important and advocating for our future. I love it.
And eventually lost his life. And again, we don't know why, because the murderer was never caught.
That hurts. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Black Business Icons.
If you have a black business icon that we should feature, hit us up on social media. You can find me at Lamar Tyler, all one word.
And I'm at Urban Intellectuals for Freddie Taylor. See you next time on Black Business Icons.
The Convo, your home for conversations on Black entrepreneurship and wealth, available on your favorite platforms.